Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Okay, so I've been meaning to address this. I had made a post a short while back talking about willpower and habits. And of course, our sister this morning had responded with a question about, how to deal with, certain thoughts or desires, inclinations, right? And so I referenced part of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he talked about ittaqillah, right? Number one, have taqwa, right? And of course, what is taqwa? This is a word that is important for us to unpack a little bit because it's used in a way, the word taqwa is used in a way that doesn't always make it clear what it really means. And so a lot of times it's also understood out of the context of the application of the word in the Quran itself. So you have, for instance, where Allah will say, fattaqullah. Okay, that, have taqwa of Allah. But then there are times where Allah will also say, fattaqu yawm. Have taqwa of a day. Of course, that day meaning what? The day of judgment. And then there are other times where Allah will say, fattaqun nar, right? That you should have taqwa of the fire. Okay, so how do we understand taqwa as it relates to Allah, the day of judgment, and fire? No, it's what? Avoid them, right? Try to place something between yourself and those that if you are exposed to them, you will suffer in some kind of way. Okay, so right, so the advice of the Prophet ﷺ was what? Awwalan, ittaqillah. Okay, so have taqwa of Allah. Then he talked about what? And then, if you commit a sin or if you commit a bad deed, then follow it up with a good one. And so this is the part that I've been trying to talk about a little bit in this idea between the alternation between habits and willpower. So let's talk about willpower. It's just what it is. It's the ability for you to muster the capacity to act upon something that would perhaps be difficult or that will cause you to make a choice, right, between A and B. I want to eat this, I don't want to eat that. I want to look at this, I don't want to look at that. I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And typically, the reason why you want to do it is because it's very alluring or very satisfying or, something in there, right? And so in those instances, one will need to muster one's willpower. And so just like in physically training the body, and we understand now that willpower acts a lot like a muscle in that it can be trained, it can be developed, but also like a muscle, it will eventually fatigue. Right, your willpower will eventually fatigue. And so let's say, you want to have something to eat, and you want to have something sweet to eat. And so the first thing that comes to your mind is, I want an Oreo, right? I want to have an Oreo, and of course you're not going to eat one. I want to have a whole bag of Oreos. And so the initial contest that's going to go on here is between you and that bag of Oreos, you and reaching out for them, though right? And that's where the taqwa part comes in. That Oreos will harm you, right? Sugar, it's bad for you. It's going to spike your insulin, make you gain weight, whatever. We understand that it's bad for you, but we also understand that it's simultaneously pleasing. And so how does one... that in that moment, that will be undoubtedly a contest of the will. Now, how does habits come to play? Well, habits would come to play when you go to the grocery store and you're making choices, like they say, don't shop hungry, right? When you're at the store, if you just simply get in the habit of not buying that kind of thing, then when the temptation comes, you will have a greater chance of your willpower being able to ascend, right, that challenge. And so in many ways, if you think about it, the way that our deen is arranged is that Allah gives us a command, right? وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ, pray. And when the time for prayer comes, particularly the morning prayer, right? There is no doubt that the prayer that will require the greatest amount of willpower to execute, at least in the initial stages, will be the Fajr prayer, right? The morning prayer. Because it's so nice just to stay in one's bed and, all those other things. And so there's no doubt that one will have to develop one's capacity and willpower to eventually overcome that, to get out of bed, right, and make salah on time. But if one, let's say, struggles initially with Fajr, but one is consistent in doing the others throughout the day, which can, depending on your lifestyle and job requirements and other things, sometimes those can be a challenge, right? And so let's say you're really regular, right? You're da'im about doing the other salawat. This undoubtedly can help to build a habit. Now, the important thing about also willpower and habit is that whenever you have a victory of willpower, then it's important to try to build off of that and create a habit. So let's say, you're a person that struggles to get up and pray Fajr. So, like in my experience with many people, the day that you do, you feel confident, you feel great, you feel like you've done this, what you have. You've done, alhamdulillah, you've done a really wonderful thing. You got up and you prayed the Fajr prayer on time. What one should try to do then is arrange one's other affairs to support that victory. So let's say you struggled to pray Fajr on time, and then one day you were able to, you had the willpower, you were able to get up, you were able to do it on time, you feel great about yourself, you feel like you did a good deed. You did, undoubtedly. So what do you do now? Do you make day 2 also a contest of will? You could, and you might be able to pull off day 2 and maybe even day 3, but at some point, if you're only relying upon your willpower to do it, at some point you'll probably trip and fall and stumble. And then you'll feel absolutely horrible about yourself. So one thing you can do is support that victory by going to bed earlier, making a choice to say, okay, you know what, alhamdulillah, I was able to get up, I prayed Fajr on time, and I'm going to go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock. I'm going to put my phone away. I'm not going to, have the blue light stimulating my mind and looking at something that's going to intrigue me or whatever. Just one more swipe, one more scroll. I'm going to go to bed early and try to formulate a new habit that is catapulted off of that victory, right? And so this, I'm just using kind of a simple analogy here. This can be used for many other, whether that's lowering the gaze or praying Fajr on time, or whatever your struggle, or even if it's, let's say you want to get in shape, right? I learned this about myself, and it's funny because at Friday the other day at the center, somebody came up to me and they said, "Wow, man, I haven't seen you in a while. How did you do it? Like, you look like a totally different person." And I'm like, "Well, I did A, B, and C, right? I did these things." "Oh, I can't do that." "Why can't you do that?" "How do you know that you can't do that?" So now the reason why you think you can't do that, which in some way you might be right, because you're attempting, you're formulating the path to success of trying to emulate what I did, right? Losing 60 pounds, putting on, 15 pounds of muscle, blah, blah, blah. You're thinking like, "Oh, I can't do that because I gave up sugar," or whatever it was, because you're formulating it purely as an act of will. And that's, I always say there's really no secret sauce, but okay, maybe that's not 100% true. Generally, there is no secret sauce. Like, I exercise, I eat well, I sleep well, I try to live a fairly stress-free life to the best of my ability. I make smart choices when I eat. Oh, okay, right? Okay, maybe the one caveat that would be the secret sauce is that I just don't make everything about my will, because I do not have an indomitable will, and I do not have a ceaseless supply of willpower. I would say now my will is stronger than it was before, but it's not indomitable. I absolutely not. And so what I found was the shifting of gears from when it was time to exert my will, and then taking those little victories and then developing habits. So for instance, I just started doing an intermittent fast every day. And so I said, you know what? I'll stop eating at 6 p.m. and I'll eat again at 10 a.m. Not really that hard. And if I eat correctly at 6 p.m. and I'm satiated, and then I'm also going to bed early. So it's kind of like daisy chaining, right? It's not a one thing. So it's a combination of habits in a kind of like, hexagon or something like that, right? They're all daisy chained together. So when I eat at 6 p.m., I'm not going to eat a bunch of carbs because, one, that's just not good for me. Two, like anybody that knows, and I'm just using carbs here, I'm talking about health because, again, you can apply this to your Islam, you can apply this to other areas. What I'm saying is don't look for one-offs. So if I wanted to achieve this goal, then I was going to need to come up with a kind of cornucopia of solutions. And so how do I go from 6 p.m. to sleep and not want to eat again, right? If I eat at 6, and I want to be able to just have that one meal and then not eat after 6 p.m. and be able to go to bed and feel satiated and satisfied and sleep and not wake up in the middle of the night and start thinking about Oreos or, Kentucky Fried Chicken, whatever that it is, then I had to do some research and figure, okay, what's going to be satiating? Protein and fats, right? It's not like I have zero carbs, but obviously lower on the scale, and I'm going to make sure that I get good fats, not bad fats, but good fats and protein, so that when I go to bed, I'm sleeping, right? You get that tryptophan or whatever, right? You sleep. And once I was able to do that, I wake up in the morning, I have my black coffee, right? So I'm still on my kind of, 0 calories until I'm on 0 calories until 10 a.m. So how do I do that? A little bit of black coffee, or you could do tea, right? Black coffee, black tea, green tea. I like coffee, so I'm a coffee drinker. That little bit of caffeine is actually more important than the waking me up. I don't really care about that, but what it does is it's a slightly natural appetite suppressor, right? And so, and then this is where sometimes it is a tandem. There is a little bit of willpower involved, especially in the beginning. And then after time, it became a habit. And so now I don't feel like I'm exerting myself at all. This is just what I do pretty much 6, sometimes even 7 days a week. I eat at 6 p.m. I go to bed early. I'm an old man. I go to bed early. I wake up, I pray Fajr, I go take a walk. I have, 2, 3, 4 cups of black coffee. Yes, you got to find what works for you. For me, I'm a caffeine fast metabolizer, so I can drink it. It doesn't really bother me. And then at 10 o'clock, I have something to eat, and I don't really think about that. So my point is that I found a myriad or a kind of daisy chain of multiple habits that can take up the slack and kind of like the everyday, throughout the day, day-to-day maintenance that I need. And then, yes, from time to time, when I want to break through a plateau or I want to try something new or whatever, then that's where my willpower comes in and I'm able to exert that. And so let's say we stop talking about, exercise. Let's say you want to now, alhamdulillah, you have conquered praying 5 times, all including Fajr on time. Now it's to the night prayer, right? Now to Qiyam al-Layl or at-Tahajjud. It's going to be the same thing. Initially, it will be a contest of will, and then it will be a habit. And it's kind of the same thing. And so when we analyze and read the statements of the Prophet ﷺ, we need to think about the tatbiq, right? The practical application of them in a language that we understand today, but is of course still truthful, not changing or right, still truthful to what he said, but finding a way to practically apply those in our daily lives. So inshallah, I hope that will help you in your Islam, in your health and other things, to think about when to alternate between willpower and habits, when one can support the other, and don't rely solely upon your willpower to conquer everything in your life. That is one of the surefire ways not only to fail, but then to feel horrible about yourself. Because when we fail at a habit, we don't feel as bad as when we fail at our willpower. When we fail at our willpower, there's some stuff going on here that really kind of can eat us up alive, right? And so if you think about it, that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, what? Follow up a bad deed with a good deed. This is what? Trying to build a habit, right? Yeah, because if it's all about willpower, and just as it can be fatigued, it's also the easiest way to conquer us, because then it's all about ego and will and, all these other things. So, inshallah, I hope this helps. May Allah Ta'ala bless all of you in your pursuit of akhirah. وصلواته وسلامه على النبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I'm going to take a couple more sips and then finish my morning walk. Assalamu alaikum.